Shalom, real quick, super quick. I'm going to entitle this video, Douglas Macgregor just said something. One more step closer to you, to the you know what. So what I did was I muted it and I put the subtitles, as you can see. So let's go ahead and listen. This is also fair use because of the image. It says, we are heading into a terrible storm. And I think that too is just over the horizon, so it's near. And what we're doing in the Middle East is probably going to accelerate. Remember when they first invaded Iran, declared war against Iran, whatever you want to call it, they said they were going to not be in there for not more than 3 weeks or a month. We're going on what, 2 months, 2.5 months? So they're locked in now. Middle East is probably going to accelerate, get worse. That storm, I don't know how we're going to manage it. I don't know if we suddenly wake up and discover, that we're no longer using dollars. You know what that means? The ones of you that are part of GMS, you know what that means. In the United States, it's going to be around the whole planet Earth. We're using some other new currency that replaces it. We're on a very dangerous road. Let me be blunt. So that's why I said that what Jamie Dimon has warned about is accurate. He's just understating it is closer and more dangerous than we suggest. Look, I think you have to look at multiple indicators. Single factor analysis is always dangerous, but I think you've heard the right people talk about the right things. What about the bond market? So anyway, you get the picture. Basically, he's talking about that there's going to be a reset, and they're not going to use U.S. dollars anymore. In the U.S. dollars in the U.S. So what's coming to pass? He should know. He should know that it's talking about the MOTB, digital currency, CBDCs, and eventually going into the marks. They know. They just told not to say it. Anyway, that's all I have to say. With that, I'm going to say shalom. On to the next shalom.
Alright, shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash. Double honors the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth with sincerity. And shout out to Yakims out there in 4 quarters of the earth proclaiming this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Hashem Rakakadash, Brakatum. So, while you're distracted with the protests and everything else, although these are uproars of the people, see, these aren't distractions for us. They are for a lot of other people, but they're no distractions to us because we understand what the scriptures meant and how to read them. See, we know how to read them, and we have the 100% truth, so we're not contemplating it's just all of a sudden the world's gone to shit. Why is the world going to shit? People just ask those questions, but they don't bother reading. They don't have the understanding. They lack the understanding, so it's catching them all by surprise. All of this. But we have the 100% truth, and we understand what's going on behind the scenes. See, we have both. We have the biblical scriptures, and we know what's going on behind the scenes, because Yahweh Shai gave us the gift of Rakal Kadash, the understanding. That's the he that hath understanding will be able to calculate the number of the beast, meaning that we will know what time we're in, knowing that this beast system is going to come into fruition, and that no man will be able to buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Well, 666 is right around the corner. That's basically what it means. 666. For those that, are looking for the simplicity of it, we don't usually use the term 666 because, okay, that's only a number. However, though, it is a mark, and it is implanted into you, see. And like everything else, though, we don't tell you that it's an embargo. We don't tell you it's plantation Christianity. Although that's a lot to do with the deception. We tell you straight out what it is. It's an implant that you have to receive in order to be able to buy and sell. And that's what we go into the most. And that's why we have the 100% truth. But here's uproars of the people. No King's protest will fight expansion of nationwide detention capacity, because it's not just so-called illegals that they are going after. They go after regular people, just shoot them right there on the street. You know, people that protest what they do. You know, so like everything else though, ISIS planning to expand detention capacity by over 100,000 through the purchase and conversion of warehouses. So, you know, how we always said a lot of them might become, you know, FEMA centers, etc. Well, here we go. Here's part of those FEMA camps, you know, because again, you know, of course it starts with the so-called illegals, the deportation thing, but there's also going to be chipping centers, you know, to, you know, those that refuse, those are going to be the first rounded up. So of course, to make sure that you never enter in again, they're going to chip them. They're going to chip them, you know. This is the penalty for coming over here so-called illegally, right? Although the only illegal one is Esau himself. Fresh round of No Kings protests will take place across the U.S. today under the slogan, "Communities, Not Cages," as ISIS massively expands its detention capacity. You know, so like everything else, ISIS expanding. So here's what they're doing with warehouses, as you can see here on X. So, pretty much, obviously it's not a video, it's just really a shot. But that's pretty much it, you know. They're trying to stop, you know, their expansion. Well, these centers were already created, they're just now finally using them. And like I said before, you know, they they have a big plan to crash the system, right? You know, and that's what's coming up very shortly here. Where buggery is still punishable by death. Yes, you know, faggot shit, sodomy. Where sodomy is still punishable by death. The latest data from ILGA, the International Faggot Shit Association, global federation that monitors laws and affects faggots. You know, faggots, you know, whatever you want to call them. They're just fucking queers. You know, they're fucking... they're degenerates, you could say, you know, and they're an abomination that needs to be destroyed, and there is still some places. As Statista Tristan Goddard shows in the chart below, according to ILGA's database, over 60 countries around the world still criminalize faggot shit, mostly through prison sentences of varying lengths. A smaller group of roughly a dozen countries even retain the death penalty because the scriptures tell you that you are to put a homosexual to death. So here are the countries, the 12 mentioned. Afghanistan, Iran. Iran's on the list. So they put faggots to death over there. Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, as well as regional Sharia provisions. Yeah, because Sharia law actually keeps the biblical laws, believe it or not. And applied parts of Nigeria and Somalia. So it's like, well, no wonder. No wonder the real reason why there's constantly bombing Nigeria and Somalia is because they go after that faggot shit. You know, of course they wouldn't bomb Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates because those are countries that are helping out the U.S. dollar. However, though, a lot of things are changing, but make no mistake, Saudi Arabia, I think United Arab Emirates became BRICS members, so they've been planning to replace the dollar for quite some time. And of course Afghanistan, which is a part of Elam. So in Elam, you know, because when you look at the table of nations, and Ishmael, you know, the Arab countries, and Nigeria and Somalia, where Sharia law is applied, which is keeping the laws of the scriptures. Hey, a homosexual is supposed to be put to death. So there are still places that keep to the law. You know, it just shows you how Babylon the Great has spread its whoredoms all around the world, and that, oh, you're supposed to engage this faggot shit, which most countries, there's 60 of them that don't allow it at all, but they don't put you to death, but then there's at least 12 out of those that will put you to death. So like everything else though, banker bail-ins, banker takeover, as a short little clip from Alex Jones, while he's still got banned video. And it's an old tape, but it's from an older broadcast of his that he put up. So I love the illustration of the cassette tape here, you know. But nonetheless, though, this is pretty much it, what they're going to do. The whole bailout system is going to bring in digital money.
This is an offshore banking consortium, combine, openly setting up a new form of government.
Yep. So, like everything else, so, you know, just going into that, you know, old tapes.
Federal Reserve to be giving sweeping new powers. Washington Times. And then you read another disinformation article, LA Times. Obama to propose strict new regulation of financial industry. Well, I've read the new proposals. It's absolute, complete rulership of the entire economy, not just banking by the private offshore Federal Reserve. This is the new bank of the world. And then when you read the fine print, oh, here it is in Reuters. Obama plan would cut number of U.S. bank regulators. The average person reads the LA Times and goes, oh, look, honey, he's getting tough on the banks. I'm sorry. It's just so funny. Congress can't find out where the money went. That's real tough regulation.
Yeah, a lot of shenanigans happened during that
and they don't even get
time.
me lying straight, because it says right here, Obama plan would cut number of U.S. bank regulators. Bush already almost cut them down to nothing. It's like they took the few thousand IRS corporate fraud investigators they had. And the whole thing's a fraud to begin with. It's a collection agency for the private Federal Reserve. But they took them off billionaires and millionaires and put it on people making less than $20,000 a year. I mean, if you're going to have your fraud investigators, you take them completely off big corporations and big money, where they're not even able to go after people. This is on record. But then you sick the few regulators you've got on people who have absolutely nothing, so that when you finally get something out of them, it amounts to nothing. Imagine a mafia where they run the prisons, the jails, and the police, and the drugs, and the prostitution, and the gambling, and then so they can squeeze the general public, they sick their police on the low-level Johns visiting their own
sounds like a motley crew.
Gambling casinos. Well, that's really what it is. That's how it works. I mean, it's so evil. I mean, I'm sorry to have to laugh, but yeah, he's getting real tough on them. They can do whatever they want, anything. Oh, they'll burn a few low-level nobodies, and the slaves will believe it. Until you get cynical and wake up, folks, they're going to rape you hard, and me along with you. So my job's to wake you up. Get up, get on your feet now. Oh, Obama says cities may be destroyed, bulldozed. Thank you. I want to get to that later. It's not enough to just mention it. I want to give them the exact headline to live in denial. This is all being implemented and beta tested. Every criminal reorganization, continuity of government, Northcom takeover operation that there is being implemented right now. It's all being done right now. It's all being implemented. I'm going to go over this more next hour. We've got a film crew in here making a film about it.
Yep, and that, I believe, was in an old movie of his called The Obama Deception. You know, because Obama promised to bring something better than George W. before, you know, who did pretty much... What did George W. do in the accident? Oh, yeah, that's right. He bailed everyone out. And guess what? Obama further did that, right? But it was all about a takeover, and pretty much the privatized banks became pretty much... you know, an IMF, a World Bank, you know, as if the IMF wasn't here. It just gave them more power, pretty much. And you can see where everything is today. But, you know, on the famine of the word, this event took place. Richie from Boston went into it yesterday, if you hadn't caught yesterday's video. But nonetheless, so somebody makes a joke and, of course, got arrested. Florida University student arrested over King Bibi drop bombs joke. FIU student was arrested after a social media joke referencing King Bibi sparked a police investigation and charges. So, you know, you can't make jokes like that, you know. It was stupid to do so because these gutter rats run everything. What she said that they should drop the bomb, man. Because everybody knows that King Bibi is the most wicked motherfucker out there. And that he totally is the king over DJ Chump. He has more power over DJ Chump than DJ Chump does. It's really Rockefellers and Rothschilds are really running everything, you know. But nonetheless, though, they have these puppets in place. U.S. student arrested after a joke referencing King Bibi was interpreted as a bomb threat resulted in criminal charges and court appearance. 23-year-old student at Florida International University was arrested last week, posted a message in a WhatsApp group chat involving hundreds of students. In the message she wrote jokingly, "King Bibi, if you can hear me, drop some bombas for U.S. capstone students in Ocean Bank Convocation Center." Well, they didn't think it was funny. The remarks appeared to echo a wider social media trend in which users jokingly call on the Israeli terrorist who is currently facing arrest warrants from the ICC over the war against Gaza to bomb or strike locations, often in traffic-related videos. So everybody knows who King Bibi is, but she made a joke about it, and nonetheless, though, is arrested for that. King Bibi treated for early-stage cancer for 2 years without telling public. Well, it's public now. Israeli Prime Minister faces criticism for hiding health problems over the past 2 years. So, like everything else, though, this piece of shit has cancer. Well, like everything else, though, you know, he seems to be in the place he needs to be. King Bibi has revealed he was treated for early-stage cancer, but is now in excellent condition. Ooh, must have taken his vaccines. A year and a half ago, I underwent successful surgery for an enlarged benign prostate, and since then I have been under routine medical monitoring, and the last monitoring a tiny spot. So basically, you know, nonetheless, though, he kept that private, but nonetheless, there's nothing private when you're on the scene. You know, they have databases on everyone. You know, so, you know, just pretty much, though, food shortages are coming. That's all part of ushering it in. Not everybody's just going to hop on board and say, oh, yeah, I'll just take an implant so that way, you know, I can have this convenience. No, they're going to do it because everybody's going to be dependent on commodities, you know, all part of the system, you know, because they're going to pretty much monitor everything and what you're allowed to eat, etc. You know, they want you to eat, you know, as you would say, that garbage, you know, they basically want you to eat garbage, they want you to eat bugs, they want you to eat fucking artificial meat, you know, not even real meat, you know, because, you know, that's all the plan, right, to depopulate, but even more so, to get everybody in compliance, to receive an implant in them, so... So this is just an audio, but, you know, it gets into it.
Food prices are rising again, and this time it's not just inflation, it's supply shortages. All the indicators are that in 2026 and 2027 we're going to have food shortages. So now's the time to act. Hey, Problem Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylene. And right now we are hearing about all kinds of food shortages. And what's happening is when there's global pressures on our food supply, we feel it at the grocery store. And we are not about panic. This is not a time to panic. We've been prepping forever. Yeah. And this is just
but you're going to have panic buying.
Right? This is something that we just need to deal with.
Just to totally get rid of everything.
Talk about what the problem is and what we can do to make sure that we minimize the impact of it on our family directly. So again, we are not going to freak out about this, but we do need to recognize that the UN World Food Program has said that over the next couple of years that millions of people will have food insecurity. So we need to address this. I think that's important.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the biggest drivers. Number one is geopolitical tensions, and that surprised me because there's no conflict going on in the world. It's
whatever.
Actually, we all know there is.
Not conflict.
Yeah, we know there is, and the most recent, of course, is the Strait of Hormuz, and that's causing a variety of impacts to us. So these tensions are there, and they'll always be there to some extent. But number two is our fertilizer cost and supply. So this is really impacting, especially the farmers. The cost of fertilizer is up. That means they generally can apply less fertilizer and still be okay financially. So we're going to have decreased harvest, and the prices are going to go up. One of the big ones that I am tied into directly is climate extremes. And this is the U.S. Drought Monitor that's showing right now what the drought situation is. And right now, 60% of the contiguous 48 states is in some degree of drought, and a lot of it's in severe drought, extreme drought, exceptional drought. And so there is a lot of drought, probably the most in many years that we've seen in our country. So that is a huge factor. And I was at a board meeting the other night and listening to some of the farmers talk. One was a supplier of hay and one was a user of hay. And the user was asking the guy that trucks hay all over the United States, said, you know, what's the hay situation and should we be concerned? And my other friend said, yeah, we should be very concerned because there's a lot of areas around us where they're only going to get one cutting of hay, where they normally get 3 or maybe even 4 cuttings of hay. So the hay is going to be very short this year, and getting that is got a lot of people just a little bit concerned. So, and then of course there's always economic and trade pressures, tariffs, all kinds of things like that. So there's a lot of drivers out there that are creating this insecurity in our food supply. So understanding that just helps us kind of put it in perspective.
So what does that mean to us? The area of concern. I don't think that means that we're going to show up at the grocery store and there will be nothing.
No.
I think it means increased prices, intermittent shortages, maybe some lower quality, or maybe you're not going to be able to find things that you normally would be able to find, but there still should be food there. So I think that's a little bit comforting. Of course, always we want to talk about, well, what can we do? We need to be calm because we're prepared. Now, one of the things about being a prepper is that we don't put additional pressure on the system. So what we know right now is the system is being taxed. Now's not the time to buy your 1,000 pounds of wheat. Is that a good way to put it?
Sure, yeah.
But look at your storage and see if there's something that you may need to top off on. We want to build a working pantry. This means that you might have to cook more from scratch, and that's okay. But do you have rice and beans, oats, all those basic things? Maybe canned goods, freeze-dried goods are a really good thing. One of the things that's going to be in really short supply is beef. And so if you have a freeze dryer and you've been freeze drying the meats that you use, then it doesn't matter as much. But really those shelf-stable things that you normally eat, don't stock up on them if you don't normally eat them. But I guess now would be a good time to kind of talk about what it looks like will be in short supply. So according to the internet, corn, wheat, and rice, and those will all be due to the high fertilizer costs, right? Forcing a shift to soybeans. Well, for us, we have that kind of thing in storage. So we're doing okay. Proteins like beef and eggs. Well, we don't have a lot of beef stored, right? And one of my friends was talking about how it was $20 at the grocery store for a pound of steak. That's way out of our price range. But we have our own chickens. So the fact that eggs are going up at the store, we only feed ours a little bit of grain, so the grain cost doesn't matter as much because we can let them free range here. So we'll eat more eggs. We'll eat more of what we have available instead of knowing that beef is going to be in short supply and running out and buying everything that we can. And the beef is a huge issue because isn't it, we have less cattle than we've had since 1950?
Oh, it's been for many, many years. Yes, it's the lowest level. So
no hay feed them?
You know, you look at those drivers and they're driving that. It's just kind of a natural consequence of what's going on.
So you need a working pantry. Make sure that you have food in there, and it's okay if it's just the very basics. Number 2, we want to rotate our food storage. And I've actually been working on a video that we'll go through soon, but it's all on popcorn and storing popcorn and how much it's so much less expensive to buy popcorn and not use the microwave or the bagged popcorn. And so we'll have a video coming out, but know how to rotate through your food storage and use what you actually have. You save so much money when you do that.
Yes.
Number 3 is to know your numbers. Like, how much food do you really need? And considering that this is a year or maybe 2-year shortage that we're looking at right now, it would make sense to have a year or 2 of your very most basic grains, right? Typically, you're looking at 2,000 calories per person per day, or 400 pounds of grain for a year supply. So if you had a 400 pounds of a mixture of, say, wheat and rice and oats, maybe pasta's another good one, then you know you have a year's supply. So sometimes that's a little bit easier to gauge it that way. But know your numbers, know how much you need, and then work toward getting that a little bit at a time.
So, like everything else, that's what they don't want you to do, be prepared. But that's a little more of a preparedness audio. You know, but that's what they want, is to regulate everything to where you're constantly having to hit the food banks. And those are going to be government controlled. They're not going to just be, you know, at your local mission or whatever. You know, it's all going to be handed out by the government. You know, probably most likely the National Guard will be handing that stuff out. Chinese exporters hike prices as the Iran war triggers ethane shortage. Plastics crunch. So, like everything else, so ethane, you know, essential to making plastics now. Everything's reliable on plastics. Almost everything went to plastic. You know, hardly glass is used anymore. So almost everything's plastic, you know. Even the alcohol bottles are mostly plastic. I mean, some are still glass, obviously, like your 40 ounces, etc. But, man, a lot of the hard alcohol, like vodka and shit, are now all plastic. I know, because I recycle. You know, after years of cutting prices amid overcapacity and cutthroat competition, Manufacturers now raising prices on everything from swimsuits and ski suits to medical syringes and air conditioners. Yeah, all that is fucking, plastics, it covers a lot more. The culprit, Iran war's energy shock, which has sent oil-linked input costs skyrocketing and now ripping through the straight through to global store shelves. And it's going to keep on going like this because, this is all being done purposely. Products reliant on rubber, plastic, and oil-derived chemicals were hit hardest. Syringes saw prices surge. Well, you shouldn't be shooting up anyways, but I know that there's those that need insulin, right? But nonetheless, though, you see, this is why you get away from the fucking reliance on medical anyways, You become your own doctor and you start getting the herbs for yourself, because that's what we did. That's what we always did. We don't fucking need Esau. Esau is a poison. He's poisoning the earth. So you should have never relied on it. But synthetic fiber goods include swimsuit, women's trousers, ski suits, rose the low to mid single digits as polyester and fiber suppliers hike prices daily. Home appliances face double squeeze from higher metals and semiconductor costs. All this is done on purpose, So, Chinese exports have been falling since May 2023, as you know, the war between China and Babylon, right? As to who has the power. It's all being done on purpose. Everything is being shipped to China to be the leader on this new digital dollar, and it's a race, just like a race for a digital dollar. That's what it's all about. And it's another financial expert, which I'll play the video in a second. The longer this goes on, the worse it's going to be for inflation. This is where the globalists know they can derail Trump's plan, But like everything else, I don't think it's to derail it. I think it's going to go through. The renowned market expert Kirk Elliott delivered a masterclass refresher on how to navigate inflation and economic fallout from the Iran war. So these are just tips to survive what's coming. Which we know the ultimate tip is to be right with Yahweh Shai, because we're going to eat in that day. So I'm going to play this one. So, a little breakdown on what's happening with the economy. All being done on purpose to usher it in. We talk about this time and time again.
I would get excited every week, talk about the economy. I went through most of my life where you kind of looked at it big scope, but I never realized how much things happened in other places impacted us directly. And they definitely do. And we're in the middle of a reset on so many levels. I'm excited to break it down today with a guy who has done the hard work in private. He's the author of the book, Thriving the Economic Tsunami. You can get a free copy anytime by going to flyvergold.com. Information that will help you appear smarter than you actually are when you read it. And it's an easy, fun read. It's actually a good gift for a college student, anybody thinking about money in any way, shape, or form. The one, the only, Dr. Kirk Elliott.
Welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Doing great. Excited to have you back. Always curious on your take on what's going on in the economy. Obviously, big things coming out over the weekend with the Strait of Hormuz and everything that we see going on there. So curious about what's your take and what do you see going on?
Like we've talked about, this war will end. Has to, right? Because unlike Afghanistan, which last
that's wishful thinking.
Opium.
It's a black eye.
Yeah.
It's kind of a black eye. But this one is different, right? Because it's the choke point of oil for the whole world. And if the world doesn't get oil, the whole world shuts down. So therefore, we know at some point this war will end because you have to you've got to get the supply chains done.
That's not what the plan is. It is to shut it down.
Which it's now below 90, I think, as we record this, right? So things are starting to look better, right? But doesn't mean that it hasn't been without damage in the Middle East and the rest of the world, right? So who gets hurt the most when that strait has been shut down with the supply of oil? Well, how about the suppliers of the oil who aren't getting paid for the oil that they're supposed to be selling to the rest of the world, right?
They can only store so much in their tanks,
Yeah, I mean, the Earth still wants to pump it out, but it has nowhere to go, right? So this weekend, the United Arab Emirates, I doubt that, Wall Street Journal covered this deep. It wasn't like front headline news. I don't think anybody's really going to cover this front headline news except us. So the United Arab Emirates approached the United States over the weekend for potential wartime dollar backstop. Why? Because they need money. They need revenue, right? So they need what they're calling it is an emergency currency swap line, which they're going to the Fed and say, hey, Federal Reserve, United States Treasury, whoever, we're begging for money. We need an emergency line of credit. And now, let's just say what's going to happen here. So there's two options. Either the United States says, sure, we'll give you an emergency line of credit, but where's that money going to come from? Just like every other stimulus on earth, they're going to print it, right? So, boy, that's inflationary. Trump doesn't want inflationary policies because he wants to lower interest rates. So there's a good chance that we say no. I mean, we're not going to do that for you, United Arab Emirates, right? So what's the other option? Well, the UAE is going to find their money elsewhere, right? So where could they possibly find it?
There we go.
How about China?
Yeah. Yep.
Right? So,
there you are.
So this is where I'm going to read a couple of these
It's a
quotes
race
from the Wall Street
for
Journal
the
article. So
stable coin,
the UAE
digital
officials
dollar,
have discussed the possibility of securing
CBDCs.
access to U.S. dollar liquidity, including a Federal Reserve swap line as a backstop in the event of a prolonged conflict. So they need money if this keeps going on because they need revenue stream, because this is like the only thing that they really produce for the world is oil. So the rationale is it's pretty straightforward, right? It's like, we need it. The disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz have hurt us bad. So what if we don't give it to them? So they actually then came back with like shot across the bow. And they said, if dollar funding becomes constrained, we're going to be forced to settle some oil and trade flows in other currencies, including the Chinese yuan. Right, so now let's go back to when the BRICS nations actually started. So, well, they've been around for a long time, but a few years ago, they had like this big meeting where Putin opened it up, and we covered this when it happened.
I remember,
He said, our objective is to de-dollarize the world. It's irreversible, and there's nobody that's going to stop us.
Yep.
And so it's like, oh, there's a big fighting words there, right? So
Yeah, you heard the term de-dollarization.
They're systematically dismantling the demand for the dollar. So since the 1970s, we've had the petrodollar, which means all oil sold globally is traded in U.S. dollars. What did that allow us to do? That allowed us to get a debt of $40 trillion. Yep. Right? It caused demand to maintain for the U.S. dollar, irregardless of what we did. We could print like drunken sailors, right? And there was still demand for our dollar. Any other country on the planet, if they were to do that, nobody would want their currency. But yet we were allowed that privilege because we're the petrodollar. And how many countries use oil? All of them.
True.
How many people in those countries use oil? Everybody?
Everyone.
Yeah. So it's like literally everybody in the world and every country needs oil. So what a cool gig for the U.S. dollar to have all oil traded in the U.S. dollar. That's how we got to where we are. So now the BRICS nations are coming in and they're saying, we're going to systematically dismantle this whole apparatus, right? So how do they do it? Well, let's start with oil. There's all kinds of other things. They could start selling U.S. treasuries, making there more supply for treasuries than there is demand, which is going to cause the U.S. dollar to implode because there's no demand globally, which they're starting to do that. Japan has been unloading U.S. treasuries. China's been unloading U.S. treasuries. Russia got rid of all of them, right? So this is happening throughout the world. So if we still have a country to run, obligations to fulfill, and we don't have international demand for the currency, what do? We have to print it. You either raise taxes or you print.
Yep.
Raising taxes is ugly because people feel it right away. Where printing money is kind of like a hidden tax. Right. And so that's what they've been doing. So the fact that piece by piece, this petrodollar is being dismantled is a problem for the U.S. dollar because that just means less demand. So India already is purchasing oil from Russia. But with what? Not the U.S. dollar. They basically made this unilateral trade agreement with Russia that said, we're going to buy Russian oil with the yuan. It's like, okay, no more U.S. dollar. Now, UAE they're not small potatoes when it comes to oil production. It's big. They're saying, we're not going to use the dollar either if the United States doesn't give us an emergency backstop. So then they're just going to go to the yuan. And China's going to be happy to do that for them, right? Because it fits into their global objective of replacing the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency and as a petro currency, right? So to me, this is a big deal. And I don't know how much coverage this is going to get, which is why we're talking about it, right? Because the dominance of the U.S. dollar has been reinforced because of this kind of like near exclusive role as this is the currency that's used to buy oil. So this yuan-denominated oil What does that do? It's a structural breach in that system. And this is what their goal is. Their goal is to de-dollarize the world. We don't have to even consider any other option because they said that's what they want to do years ago. And they're trying to do it, which is why Trump is trying to do what? Control the strait, control the flow of oil, control commodities all over the world. Like they put silver on the critical minerals list. You know, China now is not exporting silver. The control of natural resources is like what every country needs to do right now. Right? And that's what they're doing. And so Trump is trying to maintain the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, as the petrodollar, trying to control the flow of oil and that supply chain. And this is why this conflict is so big and so intense, because the end result is a big deal. Right? So here's where I think the story is massive in its implications, because piece by piece by piece, they're de-dollarizing the world, and they're playing economic war. This just isn't a war, a boots-on-the-ground war. It's economic warfare at its finest.
And that's what's going to bring in the global financial reset, right? Bringing everything to that digital dollar once the petrodollar is dead. You see how it systematically broke it down. They did that on purpose. IRGC seizes ship with Witkoff Kushner team en route to Pakistan, so another piracy from the U.S. U.S. sanctions Chinese refinery Iran shadow fleet. IRGC seizes a ship that collaborated with the U.S. in provocative move ahead of Pakistan talks. Iran foreign minister preparing written proposal for U.S. side. President Trump sending two envoys, Whitaker and Kushner, for talks in Iran and Pakistan, CNN reported. U.S. hits Iran's shadow fleet with new sanctions and takes aim at Chinese teapot oil refinery. Third U.S. carrier, George H.W. Bush, finally arrives. You know, and so you got all these things going on at the same time. And there will be no talks. You know, Arghashi of Iran is going to meet in Pakistan, but not with the U.S., just with Pakistan. They are not listening anymore. Why? Because of the fact that there's no point in it. They already know that it's just stalling, and they know about their plans, you see, because who gives them the intelligence? They have plenty of intelligence as well. And the Israeli intelligence, Mossad, well, they keep getting captured, right? Iran arrests veteran Mossad spy, separatist, terrorist, and nationwide operations. Now, it doesn't mean that Mossad still ain't out there. It just means that, you know, they're slowly but surely getting rid of them. Iran's Ministry of Intelligence has announced the arrest of a veteran spy working for the Israeli state, along with 15 members of separatist terrorist groups following operations in different provinces. So, like everything else, though. According to a statement released on Saturday, in Elam province, veteran Mossad spy was arrested who had been collecting and sending intelligence to the Israeli spy agency, and later, on the orders of his handler, began collaborating with monarchist groups. So, you know, pretty much, though, they got one of the main guys. And, you know, it's going to be the death penalty because that's what they've been doing. But nonetheless, though, air defenses are up. And Israeli state, you know, they're not prepared for Iran's defenses because, remember, I said that, you know, wait till Iran starts bringing in the S-400s and S-500s and they're able to start shooting down planes. Well, you already seen some of the planes go down. You've seen F-35 go down and A-10. Definitely the C-130s were shot down. You know, so Iran has air defenses, and they have even more now, you know, with all this stalling. Oh, here we go with the so-called blockade and, the naval force, you know, the strongest military in the world. Now all of a sudden enters the ocean, right? Yeah, they don't want to get too close to Iran because the missiles will take them out.
Meanwhile, there is more information that is coming that's being put out by the Iranian media agencies there. But they're now saying that the reason as to why the air defense systems are in fact activated, it appears, is because of certain micro drones and small UAVs that apparently were in fact seen in Tehran and in some other cities in Iran. So the air defenses were activated because of the presence of the micro drones and small UAVs, including the orbiter part in several parts of the country. This is what the Fars News Agency, the state media in the in the Iranian nation has put out small micro drones and small UAVs, is what has been reported. Let me bring in my colleague Molly Gambhir. Molly, this is the information that the Iranians have now put out of micro drones and small UAVs. What in your assessment is happening here? Because this is clearly something that Iran is going to view as a hostile attempt for either surveillance or to try and do some other stuff. Like for instance, the Iranians have said that the Americans have been trying to get closer to where they've got their 60% enriched uranium. What are you picking up at your end?
Indeed, and look at the point at which we're seeing these reports coming in, and just to piece this together for those of our viewers who might just be joining us, earlier, just a short while back, like we've been tracking the developments, the local media reports in Iran have talked about explosions and have talked about quote-unquote hostile targets. So now, in information that is coming in, according to FAR's agency, the information that's been received reportedly by the FAR's reporter indicating that the recent sound of air defense systems in Tehran and several other cities in Iran was in response to the presence of micro drones and small UAVs, including the orbiter type, in several parts of the country. So that's the next layer of information that we have. The information, of course, that's still trickling in, but at the same time, what we are looking at unfolding in Iran at a time like this, a number of questions specifically about what and how Iran will do from here onwards, and how, to what extent will we see the tensions on the ground escalating? Because we've just heard the statement from Trump. He is not missing any words. He's basically saying that he has all the time in the world and the clock is ticking for Iran. So that's a very crucial bit of messaging coming in from the United States at the time when we are seeing these explosions being reported in Tehran. At the same time, the CENTCOM putting out that military posturing in a way of the USS George H.W. Bush in the Indian Ocean. At the same time, it's also important to point out here that this is happening at a time when the ceasefire has been absolutely fragile. What the Iranian side does or
we know it's a fake ceasefire.
Is very crucial to see, because that could also mean that things again spiral, could mean that the situation spirals out of control for the entire region, because we are also closely monitoring any reactions coming in from the Gulf nations at this point, because minute by minute what's happening is there is a lot of uncertainty about what's unfolding in Iran, because the situation right now remains extremely tense, and we are getting in further inputs coming in from the local news reports there.
So there you have it, though. They tried to attack Iran, but Iran was able to intercept those UAV drones. Yeah, you won't hear about that on the mainstream, but well, Iran says most missile capabilities have been unused in the war against the U.S. In other words, that's not even their hardest stuff yet. They still have been showing mercy. Defense Ministry spokesman said most of Iran's missile capabilities have been unused on the war with the U.S. Arguing that Iranian forces maintain the upper hand throughout the conflict, he said, "Our forces maintain complete air superiority of the occupied territories of the Zionist territory, and a portion of our missile capabilities were utilized during the 40-day war." Regarding naval confrontations, he claimed the hostile warships repeatedly retreated hundreds of kilometers from the Sea of Oman in response to decisive actions by Iranian forces. Shipping through the strait has been severely disrupted since the U.S. and Israeli state initiated the war against Iran, rattling global energy markets and raising fears of prolonged economic damage, which was the whole point of it, was to usher in the MOTB. They could use World War III for it, and you see the playbook right there. That's how these scriptures are playing out. Well, World War III, it begins with the attacks on Iran. We could also argue that, when they started invading all those other countries was the beginning of World War III. But the main part of World War III, from Pulse Tahar on down, is that when they start hitting Iran is when you need to start really looking, because that's what's going to usher in all these other countries to defend, especially Russia and its allies. Everybody's going to be involved. Everybody's going to pick a side. Everybody's going to be at war in that valley. Lebanon is a house divided as its leaders negotiate and Hezbollah fights on. Basically, the Lebanese government is a compromised puppet government put in by the U.S. and the Israeli state. But Hezbollah is the really true government there, and so you got you could call them separatists, because Hezbollah is what's been keeping Lebanon intact. That's why the Israeli state hasn't been able to take over. They're slowly taking over the south, but like everything else, though, Hezbollah still keeps fighting. Lebanon pursues talks with the Israeli state, basically sucks their dick, and Hezbollah resists in the south, and the specter of civil war is re-emerging in political discourse, which is exactly what the Israelis had wanted, because that's how they overthrow governments. Hezbollah continues to resist the Israeli invasion, while Lebanon's official leadership moves toward negotiations with the Israeli state. Despite the 10-day ceasefire, Israeli terrorists continue their operations against Hezbollah, while Hezbollah has been maintaining its retaliation. 37 Israeli terrorists were wounded in 24 hours. 2 were killed. So like everything else, though, they keep on drawing their yellow line and, just saying, you can't go past here, you can't go past here, No regional, international power can force Hezbollah to disarm. And this is what they say to the compromised Lebanese government, as well as the U.S. and Israeli state. Fuck you. We will not disarm, and you can't make us disarm. And they'll fight to their deaths, guaranteed. They also, a main reason why Syria took years to fall is because Hezbollah was helping on behalf of Bashar al-Assad. Hezbollah and, Hayat al-Sham, which eventually took over Syria. Well, Hezbollah was one of the main ones keeping them back, but like everything else, though, Bashar al-Assad, kept on taking them peace deals, in that countryside instead of going after the rest of the Aleppo countryside. What did he do? They pretty much just vacationed and didn't do anything, and then next thing you know, Hayat al-Sham reformed and took over. But Hezbollah helped to fight against the terrorists that were in Syria. Hezbollah's political council deputy Komichi made the remarks on Friday as the Israeli state and the U.S. has been pushing for Hezbollah's disarmament. They rejected pressures, saying the resistance movement weapons are tied to the liberation of the last swath of the occupied Lebanese territories. Komichi also criticized recent statements by the Lebanese authorities regarding direct negotiations with the Israeli regime, stressing such talks would not be in the interest of Lebanon. It would not yield any concrete results. See, they care more about Lebanon than the so-called Lebanese government, right? So, we know who really true. Now, I got one more video here before I close this out. Don't doubt our power, but, we see that, indeed, all these nations are going to be gathered into that valley. So, again, I'll just bring out in the NIV, Ezekiel chapter 38. Because, again, this is World War III, and this is what's leading towards it, right? So, we know that Russia is going to be very much involved in this, and we're going to see moves made. With Russia, they're going to play a lot more than just negotiating here. This is when the negotiating fails. But for right now, they're trying diplomacy, negotiations, same as Iran is. But when it turns out to be all-out war, well, this is what it says. The word of the Lord, Yahweh, come unto me. Son of man, set your face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, prophesy against him. Which that's talking about Russia and its leader. And say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with your whole army, your horses and your horsemen fully armed, a great horde with large and small shields, all of them brandishing their swords, meaning that they're militaries. Persia, Cush, and Put with them, all with shields and helmets. Pretty much all their weaponry defending these places. Also Gomer with all its troops, and Bet Togarmah from the north, far north with all its troops, the many nations with you. Get ready, be prepared, you and all your hordes gathered about you, and take command of them. In other words, they're going to be leading this. They're going to go after the Israeli state and the U.S. for that matter. After many days you will be called to arms. In future years you will invade the land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from the many nations. Talking about the Second World War, the 1948ers, who was gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, who have been led long been desolate, they had been brought out from the nations. Now all of them live in safety. You know, so like everything else, though, that's talking about the Israeli state, the 1948ers, and, you know, the events after World War II, you know, leading to them taking the land. You and all your troops and the many nations with you will go up, advancing like a storm. You will be like a cloud covering the land. This is what the sovereign Lord says. On that day, thoughts will come into your mind, and you will devise an evil scheme. You will say, I will invade the land of unwalled villages. I will attack unsuspecting people, all of them living without walls, without gates or bars. So like everything else, so, you know, eventually Russia's going to lead the charge. It's going to wipe out the Israeli state, you know, and that's when, you know, you could say that this Third World War, the nuclear war, begins. You know, you got the Samson option possibly playing out. You got Trump, who actually was going to nuke Iran. Hey, once those angels of the floor of the Most High is loosed, man, it's just a matter of who destroys Damascus. We know that that's one of the cities to be taken out, but we know that it's the Third World War, so lots of cities are taken out, just that Damascus seems to be at the very end part. Either way, though, World War III is coming quickly. So hopefully this has been edifying. Got one more here before we close this out. Then I will say, Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rekakadosh, Wal Abba Babal. Brakatam, Jehovah elect, Shalom.
Shalom. Kahullah, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yoshai, Ba'ashem Cha, Kodash. Double honors to Apostle Elder Greg Millstone. Shalom to Hope Philip. This is very call from the GMS Cleveland camp, but we're on the edifying lesson. And don't know exactly how I'm going to get a title to this. This is going to be along the lines of, you know, basically going to the subject of how Ba'ashem Yoshai, building up, you know, this hopeful elect men's faith, man. All right, and really tapping into the what's the word, the unlimited power of Yahweh Shai. And you know, in the world, you know, you're in the carnal mind, what's so-called carnally possible. You know what I'm saying? In the world, this wicked age that's ruled by Esau Edom, he constantly pushes that vibration of, like I said, things being limited, man. But Yahweh Shai is unlimited. So when we come into the time of Jacob's trouble, we're coming to the time where Esau is going to persecute not just the men of the Lord, but also the believers, and he's going to implement his mark of the beast system, the RFID microchip, or whatever acronym Esau is going to use for it. And if you're going to be cut out that system, that's also how Esau plans on cutting out the believers. Okay, he's not necessarily going to grab every single one and be like, fuck it, I'm going to set this mark of the beast up, and if you want to eat, you got to come through me, you got to go through me. But Yahweh Shai, he's going to show his power and his might, man. He's unlimited. There's nothing for the Lord to manifest food. It's different. I mean, I could be all night giving examples. Like I said, and Buzz did videos on them. Our elders, the apostles, the heads of camps. I've done videos on it. Like I said, Elijah being fed, waking up, the angel telling him to rise and eat XYZ. But I'm gonna highlight, like you see the picture, AI pictures. You know, Jake using them for righteousness. You know, Yahweh Shai, he was feeding with the fishes. So I'm just going to read that account. There's an example of the unlimited power of the Lord. They're in the middle of the desert and no food around. The disciples are telling them, hey, look, let other people go so that way they can go to the villages and eat. And I'm just going to go ahead and get into it, right? Because I said, this is the unlimited power of the Lord. I probably entitled this lesson maybe something similar to that. The unlimited power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, man. All right, 1 second. I'm not going to be train tracks. Give me a second, man. I'm going to start at, probably going to start at verse 3. I'm in Matthew 14, by the way. Matthew 14, I'm probably going to start at 13. It's not going to be super long. Let's just quick. This is my spirit. Looks at looking at this picture as I have on the screen. All right, the unlimited power of Yahweh Shai. The Lord, I was meditating on that during the live stream. Is in my head. I'm like, yo, the Lord, He building our faith up to believe in Him on a high level. All right, to look beyond the carnal, look beyond what you see right now, even the kingdom. The fact that we're out here preaching it and believing it for years and years and years. Shit, apostles, decades, shit, heads of camps, brothers, decades is literally because we see it. We can see past the now. All right. This is Matthew 14 and 13. When Yahushua heard of it, he departed thence by ship into a desert place apart. And when the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the cities. And Yahushua went forth and saw a great multitude and was moved with compassion toward them, and he healed their sick. So even that, the fact that he was Yahushua, the power to his ability to heal things instantly, man. Give the lame, okay, the ability to walk. Give the blind the ability to see. Give the deaf the ability to hear. All right. That's unlimited power, man. How about there's nothing beyond the capability of Yahweh Shai, because He's the one that created creation in the first place. This is literally His work. All right, He can edit it as He pleases. It's like you have anything you create in this world, anything you have like something as simple as Microsoft Word. You know what I'm saying? We all use that growing up, especially some brothers maybe not. The brothers are up in age. But in school, all right, you use Microsoft Office Word, right? You got to write a report or whatever, some project for school, and you type it out, and you go through, you can edit it and change it as you please because it's your work, right? Okay, well, guess what? How about Shem Shai? He can do that. Creation is his work, okay? So again, verse 15, and when it was evening, his disciples came to him saying, this is a desert place, and the time is now past. Send the multitude away, that they may go into the villages and buy themselves victuals. But Yahushua said unto them, they need not depart, give ye them to eat. And they say unto him, we have here the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He said, bring them hither to me. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and took, it's like I'm saying these motherfuckers doing traffic, but they're tripping. It says, he says, he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and brake, and gave the loaves to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude, and they did all eat, and were filled, and they took up the fragment that remained, 12 baskets full. So literally, Yahushua used spiritual power to multiply the food, man. All right, all they had was 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and Yahushua, he literally just, with a thought, was able to manipulate and manifest more food. He replicated what they already had, man. This is high level, man. That's what he's saying. That's why Yahushua, he was doing things so casually, like the disciples were panicking. Like, for example, when they was on the ship and it was a thunderous storm and the ship was rocking, they said, Master, wake, we perish, and he literally just arise and rebuke the sea, the waves, man. All right? Yahushua was constantly showing examples on why you should believe in Yahweh Shem Yahushua and show faith, man. Yahweh Shem Yahushua is way beyond any carnal thing that you can see, okay? Or that you can feel, taste, or touch, man. He's way beyond that. All right? So that's just the point I'm emphasizing in this lesson, Lord willing. And let's say about thinking that Yahweh Shem Yahushua is limitless, man. Think beyond. Like I said, think no limitations, man. There can be a time in Jacob's trouble, and maybe let's just say it's 3 brothers, and it's 3 brothers, and 2 of those brothers got families, they got their wives and children with them. All right? All we got is 1 loaf of bread or some shit. All right? Well, guess what? What's going on? Hey, this ain't nothing for you. How about Shem Yahushua to replicate and multiply this so we all eat? All right? Ain't nothing for him to send an angel to have, you may literally be taking a nap, and you wake up, an angel tap you, wake you up, and literally he got a whole feast prepared for you. Like I said, it literally happened to Elijah multiple times, all right, to get his strength back. Because he was on the run, all right? And we're going to be on the run very soon. We're going to be able to move. It's going to be Jacob's trouble. It's going to be not just Esau coming after us, but it's going to be a societal collapse, okay? Like all these different movies you see, World War Z, the grocery store scene, it's going to be like that. It's all hell breaking loose. People that took all the stuff at the grocery store, people invading each other's neighbors, they said we're going to move, okay? And how about Shem Yahushua, he's going to be manifesting food, man. It's like, that's his comfort. That's going to be beautiful, man. That's why Isaiah 33:6 is written, because when all this hell's going on, all these people are panicking, they're so afraid, we're going to be tripping. We ain't going to be tripping. We're like, man, bro, the Lord, there's nothing for the Lord to feed me right now. I'm just going to keep walking in every direction how about Shem Yahushua through the Spirit want me to go, and I'm just going to trust me how about Shem Yahushua. Shit, I know the Lord going to feed me. That's beautiful, man. That's powerful, man. That's powerful to know we're good. And of course, we hope and pray how much Yahushua keeps the same faithful spirit upon us in that time. But like right now, I think about it, man, I ain't tripping. And that's why those who are with us are going to marvel. All right, like that's why like the spirit been headed by Isaiah 4:1 recently this week. Like literally, that's why I'm gonna marvel like all this hell, all this tribulation going on, and we ain't tripping. Like I don't know how much Yahushua gonna feed me soon. And that's a powerful thing, man. All right. So again, continuing on. Verse 20, it says, and they did all eat and were filled, and they took up of the fragments that remained 12 baskets full. So there's leftovers. It says, and they that had eaten were about 5,000 men, beside women and children. So there's 5,000 men that ate, and their wives, and their children, maybe their sisters. All right. So there's always more women than men. So it's even more. It's at least double. So at least 10,000, a minimum 8, man. All 5 loaves and 2 fishes, man. Because Yahushua is able to replicate that. So yeah, and look towards that in the time to come, man. Okay, the limitless ability of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, man. All right, so we have nothing to fear, we have nothing to worry about, man. It's trust in the Lord. So call him like Yahweh Shem Yahushua, Shem Macgregor, Devon, Sepasel, Great Millstone, Shalom, Tov, Lake, man. The Bible ball, Kwame Shalom.